This looks like a normal gorilla tag lobby, but what if I told you it was infected? In this video, I'm going to cover a ton of different ghost stories like this, and as the video goes on, they get even creepier. The first story starts just over a year ago in early 2025. A player was planning to join a code with his friend. At first, everything looked normal. After he joined the code, they met up and talked about what they were going to do. Since they already played the new update, there wasn't anything new for them to try, and they already played a lot of ranks, so playing comp lobbies would just be boring. Then one of the players suggested ghost hunting. At the time, there weren't a lot of new ghosts in the game, so it would be difficult to find anything in the normal ghost codes, but they didn't have anything else to try, so both the players walked over to the computer and started joining codes. They tried basic ones like Daisy09, PBBV, Run, but they had no luck with these codes. They were either full or didn't have any kind of ghosts or bots. They couldn't even find people pretending to be ghosts. After joining around 15 codes, the players found nothing, and they were ready to give up, but they both decided to try one more code. The code was Dread 444. This was a very random code, which is why they thought it would work, since all the popular codes had nothing, and most of them were full, so they had a good chance of finding something in a less popular code. So they both clicked enter and joined the code, not having any idea what they were about to find. As soon as both the players got in the code, something felt wrong. The game had instantly changed to nighttime. This rarely happens in the game, but it could just be a glitch. But that wasn't the only weird thing in this code. When they looked at the computer, it said there were 3 players in the code, meaning they weren't alone. One of the players went to check the leaderboard, but it only showed 2 players. This made no sense. It was like the 3rd player was invisible, so they decided to try and find the player. They searched maps like forest, canyons, caves, but couldn't seem to find this mysterious 3rd player. The last map they were checking was city, and that's where they saw it, standing by the mirror. It looked like statue at first, but it had a completely different color code, so they knew it couldn't be statue or any other ghost they knew. Both the players were very scared, but they had to find out what was happening. So one of the players approached the ghost. Suddenly, its head snapped around to look directly at that player, and his game froze. The other player instantly ran. He knew he had to escape the code now, but just before he made it to Stump, something was blocking the entrance. It was the ghost. At this point, he had nowhere to go. The only thing he could do is wait for his game to crash. A few seconds later, he got kicked off the game. But the story doesn't end there. After his game crashed, he called his friend, and he said the same thing happened to him. They both wanted to get back on the game and rejoin the code to try and find that ghost again. When they got back, they went straight to city, without even checking if it still said 3 players. But when they got to the mirror, there was no one there. This was very weird. They walked over to the mirror and waited for a few minutes, but nothing happened. Whatever was in the code a few minutes ago had completely disappeared, and at this point they were ready to just get off the game and forget about whatever happened a few minutes ago. But then suddenly something moved in the mirror. They looked in the mirror as the ghost slowly walked up behind them. They turned around to look at it, and then it banned them from the game, and the players were never seen again. Before I move on to the next story, shout out to my last 5 subscribers. If you want to be here next time, then subscribe. But anyway, now it's time for the next story. The next story starts in 2023, specifically in December, a few days before the Christmas update. A player was just joining random public lobbies. Then he decided to go into a city lobby. He had no idea, but this would be a big mistake. The lobby took about 10 seconds to load, which is weird but not anything crazy, because he could have just been lagging. And it turned out he was. Every few seconds, his game would start glitching a lot. He doesn't usually have bad internet, so this didn't make sense. But again, at the time, it didn't seem that weird. He talked to some of the other players for a while, until it happened. They heard a loud, distorted siren screeching through city. The weird thing is, it didn't sound like a soundboard. It sounded like it was in the game. The siren carried on for another minute, until it suddenly stopped, and a warning message started playing. The voice was very distorted, so it was difficult to tell what it was saying, but the last sentence was clear. It told them to leave before the entity joined, and they had 10 minutes left. They had no idea what the entity was, since they could barely hear the message. At this point, a lot of the players got scared, and 3 of them left the code. At this point, they realized it wasn't a public lobby anymore. The lobby was now a private code, and the rest of the computer was broken. The only button that worked was option 1, the button that lets you leave the code. Like I said, some players got scared and left the code, but 7 of them, including the player I talked about at the start, stays in the code. Since he hadn't seen a ghost or entity in Gorilla Tag before, the player was very curious, and like the rest of the lobby, was going to wait for this entity to join. They waited about 5 minutes until another siren started. This time it was a lot quicker and another warning message started. This time it was slightly clearer, but it was still difficult to understand. You could hear the occasional word like escape or it's not too late to leave, before it ended by saying the entity will be here in 5 minutes. This time no one left the code. They all wanted to see what was going to happen. They all just waited in city, not knowing what was about to happen. Just 2 minutes before the entity was supposed to join, they heard the siren for a 3rd time. This time the message was a lot shorter, but it was also a lot weirder. It just kept repeating leave now over and over again, and ended by saying they have 2 minutes left. This time 1 player left, leaving them with just 6 players. But at this point, the players noticed something interesting. There was a player with a blank name on the leaderboard, and they hadn't noticed this player before. This was most likely the player reading out the messages. This changes everything, because this could mean there's a higher chance that this was fake. But they only had to wait 2 minutes to find out what was really happening. Then 1 minute before it was supposed to join, the player with the blank name appeared in front of them. It told them they should have left the code, and it was too late now. As soon as that player disappeared, a loud alarm started. It continued until it was time for this entity to join. Then suddenly, the game went dark. You could only see a small circle of light in front of you. This obviously scared the players, and they knew this meant the entity was in the code. They decided the best strategy was sticking together, because if they lose each other, the code would get 10 times more scary. They could hear distorted screams coming from Stump, so they began to walk over. But even though they were walking in a group, 2 of the players went missing, leaving only 4 players. When they got to Stump, they saw the entity for the first time. It was standing in the middle of Stump, staring back at them. Then suddenly, every player except the player I talked about at the start completely froze. No one knows if they got kicked or banned, or even if their games just crashed. After this happened, the player ran into Forest as fast as he could. He could hear the entity following close behind him. He quickly hid behind a tree, hoping the entity didn't see him. He could hear its footsteps slowly getting closer. He couldn't risk running away. He had to stay behind that tree. Then suddenly, the footsteps stopped. The code was completely silent. He turned around to see what was happening, and it was right behind him. He took off his headset and turned it off. When he next used it again, Gorilla Tag had been deleted off his device. He never reinstalled the game. The next story starts in 2022. A group of 5 players decided to get on Gorilla Tag. At first, they were just playing in a private code, but after around 15 minutes, they got bored, so they decided to join some public lobbies. When they first joined, everything seemed normal. They were just casually playing with the other players in the code. Nothing seemed weird, until the code suddenly changed from casual to infection. This was weird because this can't happen in Gorilla Tag, unless there's a hacker in the code, but it didn't look like anyone was using any kind of mod menu, so this was creepy. But they just decided to play infection for a while, not knowing what was about to happen. After around 5 minutes, the players noticed something very weird. After the round ended, one of the players had a dark green color code, but it's not like he just changed his color code. It was a weird shade that's impossible to get without hacks. This made them assume he was the hacker that switched the game mode, but the player knew he didn't do anything like that, which left him very confused. He tried to explain himself, but no one listened. They just continued playing like normal, until the end of the round, when another player had the same impossible green color code. This was starting to get creepy. They knew it was unlikely that the other player could hack someone else's color code, so the only explanation is they were both hackers. But even though they assumed this is what was happening, they were still very confused. The green players also claimed their movements felt a lot slower, and that the game was blurry. At the time, the other players just ignored this, but that was a big mistake. After the end of the next round, the same thing happened again. Another player had the impossible green color code. They knew this couldn't be a coincidence anymore. There was some kind of infection going around the players. But this didn't make any sense at all. Without the mod, something like this is impossible. And even if someone had had mods, every player would have to have it installed, and most of them weren't playing on PC. The third infected player also said their movements felt slow, and some areas of their screen looked blurry. At this point, they didn't know what to do. They knew every round a new player would get infected, so the only way to avoid this was to make sure the round didn't end. But this was difficult, because it was so easy just to accidentally tag someone, and some of the players wanted to know what would happen if more people got infected, so they couldn't avoid it. 3 minutes later, the round ended, and another player got infected. This kept on happening until there were 3 players left. None of them wanted to be infected, but they were being chased by the rest of the lobby. When the 3 players tried to leave the code, the computer wasn't working. The only thing they could do was hide. They ran into city, but they were still being followed, and it didn't take long for all of them to get tagged. Now there were just 2 players left. They tried hiding in mountains, but they couldn't escape the others. It didn't take long for both of them to get the infection. Now the whole lobby was infected. All their screens slowly started to turn green. Some of them claimed they saw shadows moving around near them, but it was impossible to tell what was really happening. It didn't take long for the whole lobby to be completely dead. The players were all fine after this event, but after this, they never joined that code ever again.